Hello students, welcome back to your class on memory management. So in last class we had seen to the purpose of memory management, why memory should be managed. We saw to the various address types like logical address, physical address. We saw what was address binding, dynamic loading, dynamic linking, and then swapping. And finally, we had seen to your contiguous memory allocation. So we started with your contiguous memory allocation. We told how and what are the partitions of the memory allocation. Now let us see how actually the memory is allocated. So the memory allocation could be divided as contiguous and non-contiguous. So again, in contiguous you have single partition and multi-partition. Again, under multi-partition we have fixed and variable. Talking about non-contiguous, probably we would be addressing to the end of this chapter. Now talking about contiguous memory allocation, which we started in the last class. So we have discussed about what is single partition. So there is a single whole partition that is available for the user process. So that is one of the simplest implementations. We saw that previously, where the main memory, in the main memory there is one portion where the operating system is resident and the rest is available for the user process as a single large partition. Now let us see about your multi-partition allocation, where we have multiple partitions of memory for the process. So as told, we have two types of multi-partition. One is fixed, which is also called as static partitioning. The other one is dynamic or variable size partitioning. Now talking about your first partitioning, that is fixed size partitioning, you can notice here. So again, in the main memory there is operating system resident. In single partition we had whole of this space has one single partition for the user process. Now in multi-partition, this space that is available for user process is divided into multiple fixed size partitions. So each partition can contain only one process at a time. So the degree of multi-programming depends on the number of partitions that you can make in the user process. So whenever a partition is free, a process is selected from the input queue and it is loaded to the memory. And once the process terminates, the partition is again available to another process. Now let me take this value of n to be 10. Fine. Now if value of my n is 10, so this is 10 KB partition, this is 30 KB partition, and this is 60 KB partition. Now I will have an input queue to each of these partitions. Why do I have an input queue to each of these partitions? Now if there is a process that is less than or equal to 10 KB, that will be waiting in this input queue. If there is a process that is less than or equal to 30 kb, that will be waiting in this input queue, and if there is a process that is less than or equal to 60 kb, that will be waiting in this input queue. As we have discussed, each partition can only contain one process. Now in a system, if there are two or more processes that has a capacity of 10 or less, then only one process can run here. The others have to wait in the input queue. Now if I say process P1, so process P1 is loaded to this partition. After it completes its execution, there can be another process that is loaded. Now why are we making this kind? Now why everything just cannot be of 30 kb each, or why every partition can be 10 kb each? Why are we not doing it? Every process is of varied size. Just to give you a realistic example, a clothing manufacturer, when they have to manufacture, they are manufacturing it of in generic of different sizes. So the same is here. We have processes of different sizes. So according to that, they may be fitting into one of these partitions. There is another thing about your allocation. This is, now let me say I have a process. I say process P1, it is of 5 kb, and I have process P2 that is of 20 kb, and then I have process P3. Let me just try to move the whole thing here. Yes. Then I have process P3 that is of 45 kb. Fine. So now I'll be putting my process P1 to this partition, and probably I'll be putting my P2 to this partition and P3 to this partition. Now my process size is 5 kb, but the partition I am allocating is 10 kb. There is 5 more kb remaining. This is an issue of fragmentation. Probably we will address to that in detail in the coming slides. So to remember, we can never get a process of the exact size. There will always be some space that is remaining. How is that dealt with is what we will see further. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of fixed sized partitioning? The advantage is it is easy to implement, and there is a very little overhead on the operating system, where it is going to configure or fix the partitions before the start of the execution. So that is why fixed size partitioning is also called as static partitioning. Now, what are the disadvantages that is associated? I previously showed you one of the examples of fragmentation. So there can be internal and external fragmentation. I will again stressing on it. I will not take about fragmentations in detail now. Probably we will speak about it few minutes later. So basically fragmentation, there is a little waste of memory that is happening. And the other disadvantage, that is the limit on the process size. If there comes a process that is greater than the partition size, then probably it cannot be accommodated. And again, there is a limitation on the degree of multi-programming as well. Now you can notice here, if I have made 3 partitions, then I can only have 3 programs that is running in parallel. So having said about these disadvantages, the next thing that we have is about your varied size partition. So variable sized partition will try to overcome some of the disadvantages that we addressed in your fixed size partitioning. So here initially the memory is empty and the partition is made during the runtime according to the process need. The size of the partition may be equal to the size of the incoming process. The partition size varies according to the need of the process. So the number of partitions in the memory depends on the number of incoming process and the memory size. So previously, irrespective of the number of processes in the system and its size, we had fixed set of partitions, but here we vary the partition according to the size of the process. So once we find a hole or a block of memory available, we allocate that process as much as memory it needs, and we keep the remaining memory for the other process that may come in the future. Just to illustrate what I am talking about, now you can see, now if I say process P5 was the first process to enter, then if I just have to mask these things, then it would just be using the memory that it has. Now you can see here the same thing is illustrated. We have process 8 that is completed the execution and it is releasing the memory. Now we have the next process, that is process 9, that enters. So it is finding this one large hole that is available, but process 9 shall be allocated only as much as memory that it needs. Again we have another process, that is process 10, that arrives, and again process 10 shall be allocated as much as memory it needs. So this is how your variable sized partition happens. So as discussed, this is not configured before the execution, it dynamically changes. That is why it is also called as dynamic partitioning. So, and the extra overhead the operating system have to maintain is the operating system have to maintain the information about the allocated partitions and the free partitions or the holes that is available. Now talking about some of the advantages of it, so we do not have an internal fragmentation, but still there could be some external fragmentation. There is no restriction on degree of multi-programming. What do I mean by that? Previously in a fixed partition, the degree of multi-programming was restricted to the number of partitions. Here it is not so, and there is no limitation on the size of the process as well. So these are some of the advantages that we have towards your variable sized partitioning. Now we told here that there is a hole that is available, but this was a illustration or representation that was pretty clean. That is, I had a space here, there came another process, I just allocated it here, and then there came another process which I just allocated adjacent to that. Now, what if in the same scenario here I am having process 5 that is completing the execution and releasing, and again here I have process 2 that is completing its execution and releasing. So there is a possibility that there are multiple free blocks or holes that is scattered around the main memory. Now, when I have multiple free blocks or holes, how do I choose which block is appropriate to which process? So, to do the same, we have three strategies or algorithms. So, this algorithms identify which hole is better suited for a process. So we have three strategies, that is your first fit, best fit and worst fit. Now how does each of it work and how are we going to actually allocate the process into the hole is what we'll address. Now what is the principle of first fit? It tells we allocate whichever is the first big hole that we find. Now let us see to the illustration. Now let me say these are the number of jobs or the process that I have, and each of it with this memory request. So I have job 1 with a memory request of 20 KB, job 2 with 200 KB, job 3 with 500 KB and job 4 with 50 KB. Now what does first fit tell? It is going to allocate to the first available block. And what are the blocks that I have? I have it as, what are the blocks or the holes? That is the more technical term. So I have 200 KB, 30 KB, 700 and 50 KB. Now job 1 is going to allocate for the first free hole, that is 200 KB. Now you can see the size of the job and what is allocated. So here again there is a possibility of fragmentation. Again job 2, what is the next available hole that fits in? That is 700 KB. And job 3, what is the next available thing that fits in? No, there are no available holes. So job 3 have to wait in the input queue. And next we have job 4. So job 4, the next available hole is 50K. So you can see here there can be a hole that is not at all used. Now let us see to the next technique. So this is the algorithm, that is your first fit. So the first fit algorithm tells to fit the process into the first available block or hole. The next thing that we have is your best fit. So what does best fit tell? To allocate to the smallest hole that could accommodate the process. Now let us see the illustration of best fit. Now we have the first process. The first process or the job is requesting a size of 20K. Now it has to search the entire available block size list. So it checks for the first one, the second one, the third one and the fourth one, and then it decides that this is the best hole that it can fit the process or the job 1. Next we have job 2. So again it is not possible with the first block, it is not possible with the second block at all. There is a possibility with the third block. and there is also a possibility with the fourth block, but we have to accommodate the smallest, so it is going to accommodate it to the third block. Then we have the job 3 with the memory request of 500 KB. Now again, it cannot fit for the first one, cannot fit for the second one, cannot fit for the third one. The only option that it has is the last one, that will be accommodating your job 3. And then job 4, we are left out with just only one block, that is the block 50 KB. So you can notice here there are no free blocks that is available. You try to fit in, and there are no much of fragmentation also in case of your best fit, because you are trying to look for a block that is smallest and that can fit a process. So the last algorithm that we have is about your worst fit. Now what does the worst fit tell? You're going to allocate a hole or a block that is the largest available. So again, let us see the illustration. Now probably I want you to answer. So starting with job 1. Job 1 is of the size 20K. Now the algorithm tells to find the largest block that is available. So for job 1, all the 4 blocks are available. So the largest is your 700K. So job 1 shall be allocated to 700K. Size is 20K. Now next we have is job 2. So now this is already occupied. Now the next one we have is job 2. The largest possible among these 3 is 200K. So that would fit well. So job 2 will be occupied to the block 200K. So now this block is also done. The next that we have is your J3, and the largest block that is available is just 30 and 50, so J3 cannot be assigned. Next we have is J4. So the largest block that is available is 50K. So J3 shall be put here. Now we can notice, so the total available size was 980K, but how much of it was used? Just 270K is used, and J3 is unassigned. So we can again see some fragmentation. We can compare this with the best fit. We can see here. So most of the memory was well utilized and almost all the jobs were assigned. So this was about the 3 algorithms we had for allocation, that is your first fit, best fit and worst fit. Using any of the algorithms, we had an issue with fragmentation. Now what is this fragmentation and what are its types? Fragmentation is a small chunk of memory that is wasted or that is left unused. So we can have 2 types of fragmentation. One is the internal fragmentation and the other one is external fragmentation. Now talking about the first one, that is internal fragmentation. So I have just illustrated a small example here. Now if I say this internal fragmentation is usually experienced in fixed or static partitioning. Now we can see here everything is a fixed partition. So each block is of size 8 MB. Now I have a process of size 5 MB and I am allocating it here. So I have 8 MB partition, I am allocating 5 MB. So 3 MB is wasted. That is the internal fragmentation. Every process is allocated some memory, and in that allocation the process is not able to completely use it. There is some chunk of memory that is wasted. Now if there comes another process, say process C, now notice it here. I have process A that is of 8 MB, process B is of 5 MB, and process C is of 10 MB. When I see here, I feel that I could accommodate, but unfortunately I am not able to accommodate it here. Now for the same purpose, if we see, okay, if there is a varied size of processes coming in, so is it better to use a dynamic partitioning? Does or does not dynamic partitioning suffer from fragmentation? Certainly not. You can see it here. So your dynamic partition or variable sized partition suffers from external fragmentation. So you can notice it here. There are scattered chunks of memory that is there, a little space that is unoccupied and that is wasted. If all this is put together, probably it could be satisfying a process request, but because it is not available together or because it is not available contiguously, probably that also remains unused and it is wasted. This we call it as an external fragmentation. So talking about your static partitioning or fixed partitioning, it can suffer with internal as well as some external fragmentation. In case of your dynamic or variable size partitioning, it does not suffer with internal fragmentation, but definitely it also suffers with external fragmentation. So here fragmentation is basically there would be some waste that memory has to incur or the memory is not well utilized. Now what is the solution to this? So we can be reducing external fragmentation by a technique called as compaction. Now the technique is simple and it sounds good, but the practical implementation is very difficult. Now what is compaction? It is to move all the allocated memory one side and it is to move all the free memory one side. Now you can see the diagram here. Now you can see the gray colored are all the free space that is available. So I can be moving all the yellow space at one side and all the gray space at another side. That is the technique of compaction. Now if I am combining all this gray together, I probably could be accommodating the process 7, but technically and the practical implementation of compaction is very difficult. So the other method where we could reduce this waste of memory or the fragmentation is by non-contiguous memory allocation. That is the technique of your paging and segmentation. So we have addressed to the contiguous memory allocation where we had single partition, multi-partition, and in multi-partition we had fixed size partitions and variable size partitions. Now what was contiguous memory allocation? If I say a process is of size 500 KB, that 500 KB is continuously allocated. Now, and such allocations did not give flexibility, and also there was an issue of fragmentation. Now let us see how we could handle the process with non-contiguous memory allocation. Paging. It is a memory management scheme that permits physical address space of a process to be non-contiguous, and also it resolves the problem of fragmentation. Now what is the how is that paging could be implemented? It is definitely handled by the hardware and the operating system. So what is paging? Now the basic method of implementing a paging scheme involves breaking the physical memory into a fixed size blocks of called as frames, and breaking the logical memory into blocks of the same size called as page. Now the size of the frame and the page is same, and both of it follows a rule of the size can be a power of 2. The minimum page or a frame size is 512 bytes. It can range up to 892 bytes. Now what do I mean by the frame size to be a power of 2? Now the size of a single frame can be 512 bytes. The next possible size it can take is 1200. I cannot have a frame size or a page size like 600, 700. The size of the frame or page should always be in the power of 2. I can have it like 512, 1024, 2048, so on and so forth. So when a process is to be executed, its page is loaded to the available memory frame. Now let us see what is the hardware support. So the CPU generates the logical address that is divided into two parts, that is your page number and the page offset. That is what was determined in this particular slide. So what is a page number? It is an index to this page table. It is an index to the page table, and it also contains the base address to the physical memory. In the earlier slides we have already discussed what is your base address. And now what is the offset? The offset shall be combined with the base address, that is going to actually determine the physical memory. Now again, this page number is giving to the page table. Now what does the page table do, or what is the purpose of the page table? The page table maps the page number to a particular frame number. And again, the physical address here has two parts, that is the frame number and the frame offset. Number of bits in the frame is determined by the frame number, that is how many frames the system can have. and the frame offset gives the size of that frame. Now let us see a small illustration of this. So the CPU is generating the logical address, and that logical address with the help of the page table is mapped to the physical address. Now a particular process may have multiple pages. Now if I say these 4 pages belongs to a process, so let me say process P1. Process P1 is occupying 4 pages. So the logical memory knows it has page 0, page 1, page 2, page 3. Now what is there in the page table? I have this index of 0, 1, 2 and 3. And which frame is page 1 sitting? Page 1 is sitting in, page 0 is sitting in frame 1. And where do I have page 1? Page 1 is in frame 4. Let me just mark it. So I have this mapping here. Now, so page 0 is in frame 1, page 1 is in frame 4, and we have page 2 that is in frame 3, and we have page 3 that is in frame 7. So what are we trying to depict here is, if you remember to the contiguous memory allocation that we discussed, it showed up something like this, which was a continuous allocation. In case of your non-contiguous, you can see the allocation is spread around in the physical memory. It need not be a continuous allocation. We have seen an example of your page or the illustration. Now let us see how is the free frames allocated, a small illustration on the same. So when a process requests the memory, a free frame are allocated from the free frame list. Now there are 2 images actually. This part of the image is before allocation, and this part of the image is after allocation. Now if I say there is a new process, the new process contains 4 pages. So this process, if it has to complete the execution, it needs the 4 pages of size of memory. Now this is the free frame list that I have. I have frame 14, 13, 18 and 20, 15 to be free. Now I am allocating these pages to the free frames that is available. So whenever a process requests a memory, a free frame is allocated from the free frame list, and it is also inserted into the page table. So the reference of that is inserted in the page table, so that a process that are blocked from accessing anyone else's memory, because there is information that is maintained, there is no way a process could be generating an address that maps to another process. To be very specific, if I say process P1 is having these 4 pages, now process P2 I'm sorry. Process P1 is having those 4 pages. Now process P2 cannot be accessing the frame 13 or the page 1. How do I determine that? It is the hardware support that we have, which and also the operating system together is ensuring and giving the protection that one process does not map or intervene to the other process address space. This is a little overhead that may be associated to the operating system to maintain and keep track of the information, but this is something that ensures the security or protection. So we can see here, so these are the 4 pages. So I have page 0 that is mapped to 14, and I have page 1 that is mapped to frame 13, and I have page 2 that is mapped to frame 18, and page 3 that is mapped to frame 20. So this is the information of just one process. Now process 1 is dealing with these set of pages and these set of frames that cannot be used by any other process until this process completes and releases this memory.